Sorry about that. I was sending passcodes to people.
That's okay. We're on now, right? Good. Okay, we're into discussion about the minutes, and Israel Peter just texted me. He is on his way in.
Okay.
Any discussion about the minutes? Corrections? Comments, discussion? All right, seems like we are ready to vote on the approval of the minutes. All those in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, minutes are approved. Thank you, fellow board members. All right, it's time to, if we look at the agenda, we're going to open up to public comment, a public comment period. Vice President Ashanti Blaze Hopkins will help me scan the screen for hands.
Claire, I'm not seeing any hands at this time.
Okay, last chance. Okay, we'll move on then out of the public comment period and move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the president's report. Okay, starting off with some good news. The contract for our current membership database, Impexium, a lot of you know that name, Impexium, is ending in April, and we're seizing the moment for a replacement. We know about the complaints about Impexium have been consistent from chapter leaders, chapter members, headquarters staff, and everyone in between. We heard you, and we're working on making a change. We've assembled a database committee with staff members and some other leaders to look at options, and that item is on the agenda later on. You'll hear more details from Ashanti Blaze Hopkins, our vice president. Partnering with other organizations strengthens our organization. So I'm pleased to announce that SPJ is partnering with the Poynter Institute on a program called Beat Academy. And it's a virtual classroom designed to help journalists boost their skills at covering emerging issues like private equity, immigration, climate change, and more. You can choose from 18 sessions over 18 sessions over 8 months, and beginning March 2. And we have a discounted rate of $50. The Poynter rate is $75. So we have a $25 savings for SPJ members. So that's the good news. You can sign up at membership@spj.org with an email. And I do want to thank Hazel Becker for making the initial connection through the freelance community. Thank you, Hazel, for doing that. Convention. Time to start planning our next convention, which is Las Vegas. Las Vegas, here we come. The convention is planned for September 28 to October 1 at Planet Hollywood. Session proposals are now being accepted with a firm deadline of March 10. Regional conferences are also in the works, and they've been confirmed so far. Dates are confirmed for regions 1, 2, 4, and 5, 6 and 7, 8 and 10, with others in the works. And more good news, they're all in person. So check spj.org for details, and thanks to each region for all the hard work I know this entails. I've launched a new initiative called Office Hours with the SPJ President, and members can reserve a 30-minute Zoom or a phone call with me. They can grab a glass of wine or a cup of coffee, depending on the time of the day, and pitch an idea or share a concern, make a connection, or just talk SPJ and journalism. So far, it's a success, and slots are filling up over the next few weeks. Office hours are Friday morning and Sunday evening, but I'll expand them as the need comes in, and I look forward to chatting with as many people as possible. I'm also visiting with chapters at their regular meetings. I'm going to continue to do that. Hopefully we'll visit all of them by the end of the term. And committees are, our 12 standing committees are filled and confirmed and posted on the website. They're already, many of them are busy brainstorming projects. Thank you to the volunteer chairs who have stepped up to lead them. All volunteer work, always grateful for that. Just to offer members today a brief overview of a few committee projects that are underway, I'll ask a few of our chairs to just give a very brief summary of what their committees are working on. I think I'll start with Fred. Fred Brown is chairing the Ethics Committee. Fred, can you give us a quick overview? I know Ethics Week is on the way, right?
Right. Ethics Week will be April 24th through April 29th. And we've got, I think, 3 programs already pretty well on the schedule, starting with kind of an overview of SPJ's contributions to ethical decision-making, and then a discussion of artificial intelligence and its role in writing and what kind of problems that poses. And then finally, a bit of a preview of a documentary that a local documentarian is producing about trust in journalism. And that the trust theme will sort of be, I think, a recurring theme throughout the week. We're also leaving some time for individual chapters to get together and talk about local ethical problems during that week. And that's about it. Other than that, we're considering how we go about amending the Code of Ethics in the future, and when to do that, whether to do that, how to do that.
Yeah, well, big questions, all of those
Yes.
questions for your committee to tackle. Can you just repeat the date of Ethics Week, Fred?
April 24th,
Okay.
Monday, through Saturday, April 29th.
Great, thank you very much. Jody Rave Spotted Bear is here. She's chair of the FOI committee. Jody, you want to give us a little summary of what your committee is working on?
Yeah, we've had meeting that has been recorded, and we're discussing one of our projects is to create a national template for freedom of information for tribes around the country, because of 574 federally recognized tribes. Only about, we'll just say maybe about 3 tribes actually have freedom of information language within their governmental structures. And then quickly moving on to Sunshine Week is coming up March 12th through the 18th. And our committee's been at work at that. We're looking at finding a way to showcase a documentary that won the Freedom of Information Award at Sundance this year, and it's called Bad Press. And it was actually features 2 of our Freedom of Information committee members that were a part of that film. And then we'll have some columns. There's been some interesting work being done in New York right now. The legislature has voted to open up records of police conduct, which was a legal battle. And now if a police officer is misbehaving on the job or showing bad conduct, those records are now will be public information, which is, that's a big step. In one of our committee members, Roy Guterman, actually wrote that column, so we'll be featuring that. We're working on a webinar with, hopefully we can get Muckrock to do a webinar on freedom of information request. And that's about it for now.
That's plenty. Thank you, Jody. That's great. Very ambitious. I appreciate that. And you're highlighting, you're raising awareness about new issues for us too, which is great. You're broadening our awareness about things. Thank you. Thank you so much. I think Brendan is here. I see him in the chat. Brendan O'Reilly, chair of the membership committee.
Hi, everybody.
There
I'm
you are.
Brendan. Yep. I'm the president of the Press Club of Long Island, as you probably figured out by my Zoom background. So we have a few ideas that we're kicking around and hoping to bring to fruition. One of them is a college chapter to pro chapter pipeline. We want to plan some training videos once the new replacement for Impexium gets up. So there's really easy walkthroughs for chapter leaders to get to their chapter reports. We want to raise awareness of the fact that chapters exist. What we've been hearing from a lot of our committee members who are themselves chapter leaders is people join SPJ and they don't realize that they might live within or very close to the service area of a chapter. So we want to make it easier for people to find their chapter, get involved, and if they move across the country, to be hooked up with a new chapter wherever they go. We're working on some downloadable resources for recruitment and promotion of events. And we do want to plan an event called The Secrets to a Successful Chapter Revealed. And we're going to invite some chapter leaders that really have things down pat and have them share their ideas that other chapters could pick up on. And we do have a bunch of members of our committee are interested in getting involved in the effort to establish SPJ chapters at HBCUs, which I believe the Education Committee is already working on. And some of our members are on that committee anyway, but there's a lot of enthusiasm for that coming out of the membership committee right now.
Fantastic. Thank you, Brendan. Those are great initiatives. I just want to let everybody know in the chat, there are some links to some items that I went over, and Brendan has put a link in there for his chapter as well. So please look at the chat. All right, so that's a good sample of what the committees are working on. Thanks for all that hard work. I appreciate it. Moving on the agenda, we're going down to the executive director's report. I'd like to invite Jennifer Royer, interim ED, to give her report. Jennifer, hi.
Hi, thank you, Claire. This will be pretty short. First, I'll say that I've been working really closely with staff at your part-time controller, which is the accounting firm that we hired to help us catch up on our finances since we had such turnover in 2022. They've been working very hard to get us where we need to be. They've made a lot of progress. And I have a memo from them that summarized the work that they've done so far. And I can share that with you when we get to the finance portion of the agenda, if you would like. It's pretty short. So the second thing is that staff has done countless demos and done a lot of research on various membership databases over the last few months. And we are making progress. We're identifying some that we think would be best suited for our needs. We're working with Claire and Ashanti and the committee of volunteers that they put together to make sure that we have the best, that we make the best choice for SPJ moving forward, and that we don't have to do this again in 3 years or hopefully 10 years. So we want to pick something that will be with us for a long time. Third, the Mark of Excellence and Sigma Delta Chi Awards entries are in, and the process has begun for judges to be placed and begin their work. The number of entries for both contests were right on par with what we've had the previous 2 years. So the good news is that the revenue from those is looking really good, and we'll be excited to announce the winners soon. The spring issue of Quill has gone to the printer, and it should be hitting mailboxes very soon. And we've been working on convention for this year, but also looking ahead and trying to identify cities and facilities that can host us in 25, 26 and beyond. So Katie Riggs is putting out RFPs this week, or she started. She's going to continue next week for 24. And hopefully we'll have more to share on that very soon as well. So now I would just like to welcome our communications team to the meeting. I believe you all know Zoe Berg. She has been our communications specialist for quite a while, and now she's handling a lot of my communications director responsibilities since I have moved into this role. And she is doing a great job, and I appreciate everything she does to help make sure things are running smoothly in this kind of weird time. So and I would also like to introduce you to sorry, Kim Suyuki. She is our new post-grad communications coordinator / intern who started working for SPJ in January. And Kim has just hit the ground running. She has done a great job so far, and it feels like she's been here for a year already. She just is very intuitive. She knows what needs to be done and how to do it. She's been great so far. So I would just like to introduce you to Kim. And Kim, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, good morning from my side of the world. I'm based in Los Angeles, California. It is raining so much over here. Super fun. But hi to the board. Nice to meet you. I'm Kim. I am the postgraduate communications intern. I've been helping managing socials. I've been putting together our weekly newsletter called Leads. I've been doing what else have I been doing? I feel like I've been doing so much since being here. Sending out lots of emails, helping with press releases and getting those out and distributed. Been recently working with Zoe, Jennifer, and Jody for our collaboration on Sunshine Week and getting that going, and helping work with a bunch of other initiatives and stuff like that. And I'm very excited to be here. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Kim. And Claire, I think that does it for my report.
Yeah, I want to thank both of them. As president, I'm learning about all the hard work the staff does. And I just want to say thank you to Zoe and Kim. We've had quite a few incidents in recent weeks or months too, but about journalism issues, and we've issued some statements. And the most recent one was about the tragic shooting in Orlando. And just to illustrate the power of the statements that we make, I'm going to read to you a reaction that Zoe shared it with me, that we got from a journalist who worked in Orlando. Thank you for sharing, Zoe. I spent 17 years working at Spectrum News 13. My extended family and I are at a loss to the senseless violence on Wednesday. I appreciate and value the work that the SPJ does to benefit journalists around the world. With gratitude. So it feels good to know that the work we do and the statements we make, the advocacy that we offer really does impact journalists. So, and I thank the communications team for helping us make those happen. Thank you. Okay, good. You're done, right, Jennifer? Okay. Going on, actually back to you. I'm going to send it back to you because it's we're on to number 8 on our agenda about the conventions. Certainly we have this convention coming up in place, the 23 convention in Las Vegas, but we are a little bit behind in planning the future conventions after that. We've had some setbacks. We had the virtual conferences for 2 years. It kind of slowed us down with the planning, but we're getting back on track. The board is looking at locations, and I'm going to pass it over to Jennifer to give a little summary of where we are on future conventions.
Sure, thank you. Yes, as I said, Katie Riggs, our event planner, is putting out RFPs for 24 right away because we are pretty far behind on that one. We took your suggestions on potential cities that you would like to visit and think would be a good host. And she's going to focus on 24 for Indianapolis, or on Indianapolis, Cleveland. We talked about New Orleans because we do have an agreement with them when the hurricane and COVID hit. We were supposed to be in New Orleans and we had to cancel, and they didn't charge us any fees or anything. I think we ended up paying a few $1,000s for a riverboat tour that we had scheduled, but that was pretty much it. But we are thinking that maybe 2024 isn't the best time for that. So we're going to push that back. And then some other cities that we are thinking about for 24 would be Savannah, Georgia, Atlanta, Charlotte, St. Louis, Detroit, and Minneapolis. So if you have a really strong preference on one of those, let me know, and I'll have Katie replace that third option with one of those cities. So for 25, we narrowed things down, and Katie thinks we could probably get the best deals in DC, Baltimore, or Orlando. And then for 26, she's suggesting Dallas, Denver, and Salt Lake City to put the RFPs out. So that's where we stand. And I think, once we get 24 more nailed down, she'll really start focusing on the years following to get some cities chosen for those years. Any questions or anything? I guess you should ask that, Claire, not me.
That's okay. I do want to point out, I know it's important to move the convention around to different parts of the country. We're keeping that in mind. We were just on the East Coast at DC, so we're keeping that equity in mind. Any questions about conferences, convention conference? All right, it's good to know we're working on it. We're working on it and moving ahead. All right, on the agenda next, I'm going to hand it over to Ashanti, our Vice President, and she'll give us a further update about the database project.
Yes. First, I just want to say thank you so much to Jennifer and her staff, Crystal, Corbin, everyone who has been working on this membership database issue. I know it's been quite a frustration for both Jennifer, her staff, in addition to chapter leaders, members, pretty much anyone who's connected with SPJ. So we were able to pull together a committee of both members and myself as the chair. Claire is also on the committee, as well as Jennifer and Corbin and Crystal. And so in the last, I would say 2 months, we've had 2 meetings. And in the meantime, there has been several demos done for nearly a dozen different vendors. Claire and I, as well as Hagit, have had an opportunity to sit on at least 2 of those demos. And we are in the process, as well as the staff, of whittling down the list to about 2 to 3 that they will then push to the board so that they can deliberate and determine what might be the best fit, so that Jennifer can then make the ultimate decision about which vendor we will go with. Just as a reminder, the Impexium contract does expire on the 30th. In a perfect world, we will have a new vendor in place by April 1st, and that will give us 30 days to really try and break the system and see for ourselves what might be any of the blind spots, what might be some issues that we may be able to get ahead of, and then just to familiarize ourselves with the actual system so that once it is live, come May 1st, we know what we're dealing with, we know how to work it, we know how to answer questions that will arise, and we can anticipate any issues that might pop up. Also, the staff is in the process of creating a series of kind of outreach events and resources so that both chapter leaders and community leaders can be able to further help the members get acclimated to the new system. And also, if there's any questions or issues that come up, there will be a mechanism by which people can submit that information. But I will say, regardless of what the outcome is, regardless of the vendor that we end up choosing, I think the vendors that we have that are already kind of at the top of the list are leaps and bounds better than the vendor that we currently have. And so I will just say that, I know it has been a huge frustration with this current vendor. And it seems as if there is, light at the end of the tunnel. And so I guess I would just say to everyone, the cavalry is on its way. Just be patient for, maybe a couple of more weeks, and we should have something in place that is going to be able to meet our needs, not just from the membership standpoint, but whatever system that we choose is also going to help integrate the events that we cover, the donor outreach that we have, the marketing. So it's really going to be a system that is going to be all encompassing, instead of us having several different systems that don't talk to each other, that make it even more difficult for our staff. So, we want to get our staff to a place where they're able to focus on the work and not focus on, troubleshooting issues with a vendor that should be in place to support the needs that SPJ has. So all that being said, I think that we are likely to have a really good solution to these problems that we've been facing, and it'll come sooner than later. So hopefully that will make everyone feel a bit better about the way forward, especially with, membership issues and things like that. So thank you.
No, thank you, Ashanti. Yeah, it really is very, it's just good news that we're moving on to another option. And, it's really ultimately a staff decision what database is selected. The staff gets to decide that. They're the ones that use it every day, but we're grateful that they're taking our input, and we're working together as a committee to see the demos and kind of brainstorm together. I appreciate that very much. One thing we have to be careful about, and we're aware of it, is that with convention registration coming down the road, we want to make sure that we have, have the new system in place, or at least are able to handle the registration. And that's why Ashanti's suggestion of overlapping the two, our old system and our new system. I know at my newspaper, we did that with a new press. We didn't shut down the old press until we knew the new press was running 100% for a couple of months even. So we have to do the same thing with our database system, and we're working on that too, so make sure there's no glitches in the middle. So thank you, Ashanti, for that report. Okay, moving on, we have finance report next. I would like to hand it over to Israel Balderas, who is our secretary treasurer. Israel.
Good Saturday afternoon, everyone. But please forgive me for coughing quite a bit during this report. The allergies are in high season here in North Carolina because it's been warm. So please forgive me if I have to cough and drink some water. First of all, as a treasurer, I just want to thank the finance committee. We have some amazing former SPJ leaders, current SPJ leaders, very thoughtful people. So I want to say thank you to them, because over the last 2 months, we have met quite a bit with the YPTC people, as Jennifer just alluded to them. So Matt Haw, Patty Newberry, Frank Lamonte, and then Jody, who's here, also part of the board, Peter, Ashanti, Claire, and the YPTC people. I don't think they're on, right, Jennifer? They're not here. Okay, but I want to thank them because they've been working very hard over the last 2 months. The Finance Committee has met with the YPTC people roughly 5 times. The last time we met with them was this past Tuesday. We've tried to meet with them on a consistent basis, at least 2 or 3 weeks, getting updates on what's been going on. And as you can imagine, in that 2-month period, they've been working hard, as Jennifer just said, to try to fix the books, get us in line, not only with the 22 budget, but trying to look ahead to the 23 budget. Despite all that work, we're quite not there yet. We don't have a budget for 2023. We've got numbers, preliminary numbers. I do say preliminary because even 2022 books have not been done completely. And so once that is also complete, then we'll be able to put together a budget. What I can say is, just looking at it tentatively, members and the board can expect to have some very difficult conversations as to how do we bring in more money and how do we cut expenses so that we can help SPJ, not just on the short term, but on the long term. And so with that in mind, I know Jennifer made some allusions to what the YPTC people have been doing. And so maybe Jennifer, maybe you can go into greater detail as to how you've been doing with the YPTC people more in detail over the last 2 months.
Sure. If you don't mind, I'm going to read a memo from Liz White. She's an associate with your part-time controller. It's 4 paragraphs. I'll try to read fast, but it does have some good information in it and summarizes what they've been doing. So I will try to get through this really quickly. SPJ contracted your part-time controller for accounting and financial services in mid-December 2022. Multiple issues gaining access to financial information and the accounting and related systems needed to perform the work arose at the onset of the engagement. This led to a delay in substantial progress until mid-January 2022. Further access issues continued to date. However, we continue to make progress with the information available currently. Early in the engagement, a focus was on paying outstanding bills, processing payroll, and various daily tasks needed to continue daily operations. We transitioned the accounting software to a cloud-based version so that multiple users could access the system in order to gain some traction on progress. In addition, an automated bill payment system was put in place to process accounts payable and accounts receivable more efficiently and effectively. As of the date of this memo, your part-time controller has entered 98% of the missing 2022 transactions into the accounting system and have reconciled bank statements, investment statements, and credit card statements, as well as many other related bookkeeping related tasks for the calendar year 2022. The 2022 1099s were prepared and filed, and we have addressed several payroll issues with the third-party payroll processor. Your part-time controller and society professional journalists are working together to finalize 2023 budget numbers as quickly as possible while simultaneously continuing work on the 2022 cleanup. In addition, we have many recommendations to propose and implement once we get 2022 financial statements finalized. We have put some procedures in place during this process, and the end goal is to have complete and comprehensive policies and procedures, manuals, and documents for 2023 to eliminate confusion and provide a defined set of procedures. However, the main priority is to finalize 2022 financial statements, 2023 budgets, and prepare for the 2022 audit. We continue to work toward this goal as quickly as possible. So Israel, I think that summarizes what they've been doing and their progress.
Okay, thank you very much. And just again, since we met with the YPTC people on Tuesday as a finance committee, we've been also having conversations by email. I'm very humbled by former leaders like Matt Hall and Patty Newberry, who have really taken to heart, the best ways that we can really strengthen the finance system for SPJ. I know, Claire, you sort of have a sort of best steps next forward. So I don't know if you want to share that of what happens next and what you anticipate in the coming weeks. And so maybe you can address that, and then I'll open it up to all board members if they have any questions for me.
Good. Yeah, we definitely have some more work to do in the committee, and we're ready to do it in the next week or two, and some difficult choices to make and some ideas to brainstorm to get everything in order. And we hope my plan would be that we get the budget prepared in a solid form to present to the members in March at another meeting. We'll have to call another board meeting, and we'll be able to present the full complete report to you on finances at that time. But in the meantime, I want everybody to know that we're on top of it. We've got, like Israel mentioned, we have some of our best leaders working together to get the best ideas forward and solve all of the situations. Israel, do you want to talk about the authority to continue on the current budget?
Yeah, so well, first things first. So let's open it up to the board members. I know I'm responsible to not only take questions from or present to the board members, but ask any questions. So we'll open up questions to the board. And then if they're not, then I'll sort of make recommendations as to, as you mentioned, the next meeting, what we'll do, and then what we have to take today so that Jennifer has the authority to make big purchase items. So any members from the board?
Israel.
Yeah.
This is Kevin Smith with the board. This is not a question. I would just ask that the letter that Jennifer had just read into record, that letter be part of the board material and made public, so our members can also have access to that and see what we're talking about.
Okay, sure.
I will add that to the Dropbox folder, Kevin. Thank you. Good suggestion. Okay.
Any further questions? All right. So members, what we have to do today is we have to vote to extend authority for Jennifer to continue to make purchases above $5,000. If you'll recall, at our last meeting, we did take a vote so that Jennifer wouldn't have to come every time she needs to make a purchase over $5,000 to the board. Those purchases are made in sort of patterning what the 2022 budget was. And we extended that power for a couple of weeks. We have to give that power to Jennifer again. The question is for how long? As Claire just said, she would like for the next meeting that will only focus on the finance issues to be somewhere in March. I would say, just looking at what I'm looking at right now, I think it may take 2 meetings. The first meeting will be to present the budget and to talk about the numbers inside the budget. At that time, I will recommend that we should probably let the members kind of digest all the ramifications of adopting that budget. And so we may have to do a second budget to vote on that. That would put us into April. So I would recommend to the board that we extend the purchasing power for the executive director, the interim executive director, to be through April. And then if we do adopt a budget, then that obviously that would be through the budget. So that would be my recommendation for the board members. Any discussion?
For the purposes of discussion, I will make that motion.
And then Peter, I think you're raising your hands.
I'm raising my hand a second.
Okay, so we got a motion on the table to extend the purchasing power for the interim executive director through April of 2023. Any discussion on that?
Just a quick question to Jennifer. Following our normal budget process, how many purchases over $5,000 would you anticipate that you will be needing to make in the next couple months?
It's mostly, well, it depends. Sometimes, we'll place a big order for awards plaques. That can be a kind of big expense. Sometimes we get a bill that's over $5,000. I'm trying to think of an example. It could be a health insurance bill or, something like that might be over 5,000. So not a lot, but it would happen enough that I think y'all would get tired of me coming to you to ask for approval. But I wouldn't do it for anything that is isn't already approved in the 2022 budget, that isn't part of the just normal operating procedures.
Thank you.
Any further discussion from the board members? Okay, so let's take a vote. All those in favor of extending the purchasing power for the interim executive director to be in line with the 2022 budget, I will just take a voice vote, and then if there is a dissenting vote, then obviously I'll record that. But for now, let's take a voice vote. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any of those opposed? Okay, so the vote is unanimous. Jennifer, you will have the purchasing power through April. And as President Regan just said, she plans to call another meeting, hopefully in the next 2 or 3 weeks, to present the budget to the members. And then from there, we'll take it from there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right, Claire, back to you.
Thank you, Israel, for that report, and to the Finance Committee for their hard work on the situation. I appreciate it. We're moving on to the next item, which is a complaint regarding conduct at MediaFest 22. After receiving the complaint after MediaFest 22, I asked Ashanti Blaze Hopkins, our Vice President, and our Interim Executive Director, Jennifer Royer, to look into the situation and prepare a report on what happened with some more details. And Ashanti, could you please present to the members the report that you made?
Yes. So during MediaFest 22, there was an incident where an SPJ member engaged in a conversation with a group of journalists in attendance at the convention. According to the group of journalists, the topic of discussion initiated by the SPJ member was both offensive and intimidating in nature. At Claire's suggestion, Jennifer and I interviewed the SPJ member, who confirmed that the conversation had taken place, and we also obtained a statement from a witness to the conversation, also an SPJ member, who corroborated the allegations. We believe this incident raises important questions as to how SPJ as an organization should handle complaints concerning members, including the procedures to follow in addressing such complaints against members, and the measures, if any, that SPJ should take against a member in response to such incidents. But before we address those points, I believe it would be helpful if my fellow members are provided more details about the incident in question. To minimize harm to the parties involved, I propose that the board briefly enter executive session. We can then return to public session to address more broadly the issues I just mentioned. I make a motion to enter executive session.
I second that motion.
Okay, Discussion among the board members?
I have a question just as a preliminary matter, because I too am concerned about this. But my question would be for our attorney. I know in the past, this board has been criticized by members for going into executive session. So maybe the attorney can tell us under what power we're going to be going into executive session. I know in the past, we've talked about we can go into executive session for contract issues, personnel issues, certainly legal questions. So which one would that be under, Mark?
Sure, Israel. So there are two main guideposts for the board when it comes to the meeting procedures. And the first, of course, is the bylaws. And in section 7, or Article 7, section 7 of the bylaws states that all meetings shall be open to the public except when the board is discussing confidential matters, including but not limited to personnel, privileged communications with legal counsel, and contracts. That's a verbatim quote from our bylaws. The other guidepost is from the SPJ board policy manual that was enacted by approved by the board in, I believe, 2019. On page 7 of that policy manual, there's a paragraph that deals with the circumstances for entering executive session, and I'll just read that briefly. It states the board will account for circumstances where private discussion among leaders is necessary, similar to state open meeting laws. Typical exemptions that might allow meeting in executive session include personnel decisions, property or contract negotiations, certain award decisions, pending or potential litigation, and to comply with legally imposed requirements that matters be kept confidential. Any votes taken in executive session must be reported without violating the reason for the confidentiality when the board returns to public session. So those are the two guideposts for the board. As you'll notice, the language in both the bylaws and in the board policy manual do not provide an exclusive list of what needs to be done in executive session, but provide some examples that I think are analogous here. One is personnel decisions. While this isn't an employee, it does involve individuals, and in some respects, a similar circumstance when it comes to personnel. For instance, if this had been an SPJ employee who had engaged in the conduct, then that clearly would have fallen under the policy as an enumerated item. I also believe that there's potential legal issues. Claire has asked me to attend for purposes of soliciting legal, so the board will be able to solicit legal advice during that session, which in my view would be beneficial that any privilege not be waived by holding that in the public. Again, there's nothing that prohibits the board from going into executive session. I recognize, and I'm very sensitive to, and I'm frankly very sympathetic to the tension that this organization has, in the sense that they believe in open and free flow of information. But I do believe there needs to be balance, and I think what Claire has and Ashanti have proposed here meets, tries to address that balance, which is that the discussions about the bigger issues of how we as a board, as an organization, deal with these types of issues and so forth, that will be conducted in public session. But when it gets into the private or individual matters about individual people, that at first that be done in executive session. And when the board is in executive session, I think they can, after getting into some more of the details, they can decide then what is in the best interest of the organization to further disclose and come back. And there will be, as the board policy manual requires, there will be some further disclosure to the extent there is a board vote. That vote will be disclosed, at least as to the general sense of it, in a way that doesn't violate the confidentiality, as the board policy manual said. So for all those reasons, my advice to Claire and to Ashanti was that this, at least this portion of the meeting, be conducted in executive session.
Perfect. Thank you. Appreciate that, Mark.
Mark, this is Fred Brown. In my role as a parliamentarian, I assume that since I'm not a board member, I should also excuse myself from the executive session.
Yes, that is correct, Fred.
Point of clarification then, if that's the case, can I ask the parliamentarian as the secretary, what will then be my role in taking notes? And as the attorney just said, some things will be reported out, some things won't. So, you know, you're more an expert than I do. So what will be my role as secretary?
I would say that you're probably only obligated, and I would ask Mark to confirm this, to report on what the final decision was.
Got it.
And I agree with that.
Okay, thank you, Fred. I really appreciate that.
Can I ask a quick question?
Actually, we only have board members asking questions. Am I correct about that? Fred, or?
Oh, at this point, yes. I think that's what,
Yeah,
where you were.
yeah, Hagit is asking a question, but I think we're limited to board members at this point. Am I right about that?
Yes.
Yeah, during the board meeting, the board could ask questions, except for public comment section. You can
Yeah.
invite comment from non-board members.
Yeah. Any questions from the board members?
Robert sent a message that if
Yeah.
you want, you can recognize non-board members.
Is that correct? I need to ask the attorney and the parliamentarian. You both agree? Okay, that's fine.
You can, but you don't have to, Claire. I mean,
I will. Hagit Lamore, who is the foundation president,
Oh, God.
has requested to ask a question. So go ahead, Hagit.
It was just a very simple question of clarification, which was, so can you take a vote on this matter in executive session and come back? Or is it my understanding that the actual vote would take place in public? That's my only question.
So, Claire, would you like me to answer that?
Yes, please.
Okay, so Hagit, I believe the implication of the inference that is drawn from the board policy manual that states, and this is the last sentence, it says any votes taken in executive session must be reported without violating the reason for the confidentiality when the board returns to public session. So I interpret that to mean that the board can indeed take a vote, however, in executive session. However, there would have to be some reporting on that vote when we go back into public session.
And would there be the opportunity at that point then for the public to comment?
Well, again, that would be up to the president, the chair of the board, if she would recognize people who are not part of. I'll defer to Fred. I'm sorry, Fred.
No, I would say the presiding officer makes a decision.
So this matter, which involves someone who is not personnel, could be completely handled in executive session, and the public could be told, the membership could be told very little about what it was about and have no opportunity in any way to contribute. I mean, if that's the interpretation, I'd like to just know that. I've never seen a situation where the public couldn't be told anything about, I mean, where a vote could take place before any information was given to the membership at all, unless it was personnel.
Again, that's what the board policy manual and the bylaws contemplate. Just that, which is that there could be certain matters that can be handled confidentially by the board. And this is one of them. The board, again, the board will have an opportunity to discuss this further in executive session as to whether or not they believe the harm, the issues relating to harm that Ashanti alluded to would be of the nature that would require, continued confidentiality, or whether there could be further disclosure. But in the first instance, it's my recommendation that this be done in executive session so the board could more fully understand this before it's done in public session.
Okay, thank you.
Robert's Rules of Order say very little about executive session, except that it requires a 2/3 vote of the governing board or the board that's making the decision.
And I'd like to just point out as president that we have not met in executive session about this issue. This issue has been around since MediaFest. This complaint has existed since shortly after MediaFest. So we held that, we understand the importance of transparency. We support it. So we have put it as part of our meeting today so that the public can be here for it, to hear the results of it at least. We're doing the best we can to be as transparent as we can and still minimize harm. Any other questions from the board?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go ahead, Brendan O'Reilly. I see you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, since you were taking questions from non-board members anyway, I just want the board to take to heart the fact that you need to be very aware not to have a discussion that's potentially libelous in a public forum that's going to be recorded. So there are very legitimate reasons to go into executive session before the board says things that could open SPJ up to liability. And at least in New York State, you can take votes in executive session as long as the vote is recorded and as long as that vote does not allocate any money. But I can only speak for New York State's open meetings law as far as that goes. But please don't have a discussion that is potentially libelous and could open up SPJ to a lot of litigation and financial trouble in a public forum that's going to be recorded and posted on YouTube.
Thank you, Brendan. Okay, I'm looking around. I don't see any other hands raised. For a board member. Okay, there is a, Kevin, is that your hand?
Excuse me. I'm like Israel. I'm having allergy issues, so I apologize.
Hear you, brother.
Have we taken a vote to go into executive session yet? Or are we
No,
just
there's a-
in this?
No, there's a motion on the floor.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I'm about to go back to that unless there's another question. I'm going back to the motion on the floor. Okay, so the motion is to enter executive session. Do I have, actually, the motion was made by Ashanti at the end of her report.
And it
Do I
was
have-
I believe it was seconded by
Yeah,
Danielle.
Daniela seconded.
Okay, now we're ready to vote.
So,
You want to take a voice vote or do you want to go by each individual member? Claire.
Oh, we can go by each individual member. That's fine.
Okay, so you want to
We
do
need,
a
we
roll
need
call?
2/3. We need 2/3 to go into executive session. So.
Right.
You want to go around the roster, please?
But yeah, just call for a roll call.
Call for a roll call, Israel.
To go into executive session, Claire,
Yes.
Israel, yes. Ashanti,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Daniela,
Yes.
Jody Ray Spotted Bear,
Yes.
Adam,
Yes.
Kevin. Kevin? You saying? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And Peter?
Yes.
The vote is 9-0, Claire, so we can go into executive session.
Okay, thank you. So let's just, we will be back in touch with the registered participants today. Jennifer will let you know when we're coming back into public session, and thank you and see you then.
Can I go get some water really quick? Thank you.
So this will be only for board members, please. Still waiting for a couple of non-board members to exit. Thank you.
How do you leave? Do you leave the entire meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And I
Okay.
think just to give a heads up on the chat, I think the chat would still be there when people come back, right? So anything that goes in the chat, in the public chat would be,
Yeah, and what about recording, Mark?
we probably, is this part of the
It's being
YouTube
recorded right
video?
now.
Yeah. Would this be later posted to YouTube? So we got to be careful not.
Okay. Everybody in, Jennifer? Good to go.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I want to thank the board for their hard work and robust discussion in executive session. I want to thank the members who are here now and for your patience. And Israel, I'd like you to state the motion, please.
I am reporting out the motion that was before the board in executive session. The motion was to revoke permanently the membership of an SPJ member following a complaint made at Media Fest 22 and bar the individual from future SPJ events. The vote was 6-3.
Okay, thank you. Following that, I recommend, as president, creating a task force whose responsibility will be to develop a code of conduct and a
Could
process.
you give the vote what the 6 was and what the 3 was?
The 6 was in favor. The 3 was
Thank
opposed.
you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
sorry, that wasn't clear. Thank you, Hazel. I recommend creating a task force whose responsibility will be to develop a code of conduct and a process to handle complaints about members. Okay, we're moving on to the few remaining items on our agenda. Is there any old or new business to report? Okay. That being said or not said, I would like to accept a motion or hear a motion on adjournment for adjournment. Okay, I have a question. Let's see, where's Fred Brown?
I don't think Fred is here.
Yeah, so I don't have my parliamentarian.
Also, Hagit is raising her hand.
I know, that's why I'm asking for the parliamentarian.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know. Mark Balin, can you help me with this?
Claire, I think it's up to you. You can choose
up
to
to me.
recognize her
Yeah.
as the chair, or you can choose not to.
I'm just so careful about following the procedures and policies. So Hagit, yes, your question, please.
So you had the public comment at the beginning of the meeting, and having it then before anyone could possibly comment on any of the things you were talking about means that now people can't ask you about anything that has happened since during the meeting, and especially the item that you just spent hours discussing, which totally respect that needed to be, in the private session. However, the membership, and I'm speaking as an SPJ member only, not in any other role, your membership has no way of knowing what that was about. You just kicked out one of our members, and the only thing we know is that it was about something that was said, and we are a First Amendment organization. And that is something that your members do have a right to discuss, whether that is something that we want to do, choose to do, and whether a code of conduct, which is something that, for many decades, we've discussed that we don't want to have, that this is not an accreditation organization, it's a membership organization. And so these are really huge things. And the way you've set this up is not to allow your membership to discuss any of it. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, Hagit, I haven't set it up that way. I've been following the traditional procedure that we followed for every other meeting. I haven't purposely set it up to eliminate anybody from anything. We've always had public comment at the beginning of the meeting, so I was just following that procedure.
It might be helpful, and I don't mean to be stepping on toes here, but it might be helpful if Mark could explain, why we went into executive session briefly and what we had to, and how we had to proceed, so that the membership knows that this was an issue that had to be an executive session.
Yeah, sure, Kevin. Claire, would you like me to address those issues?
Yes, please do. I wanted to be clear about.
Yeah, no, and I think there are very important issues that I apologize, I was a little late, so I just heard the end of what Hagit was saying, but there are very important issues I think that need to be discussed in public, and that I believe is the discussion they're going to have right now. There was a specific incident that the board was that the board addressed in executive session because it involved individuals, and it was, as I said before, analogous to a personnel decision that if they were employees, this would have been done in an executive session. And but the bigger issues about code of conduct, about policies and procedures for membership conduct and misconduct and so forth, that is certainly matters that should be discussed publicly in the public portion of the meeting and on the agenda. Claire put that immediately following the executive session. So I think I think the board should have that discussion, and it's teed up right now to have the discussion. So I think, without any further ado, so to speak, I think the board should proceed into the next agenda item, which will address these very issues.
But the next agenda item was to adjourn the meeting. That was that's the motion on the table on right now, is to adjourn the meeting, not to discuss anything else.
A point of clarification, just for Mark's purposes. Mark, unfortunately, you weren't here. So what Hagit is talking about is that we came out of executive session, and Claire moved on to item number 12. And she said that she was going to recommend a task force to create a code of conduct to handle complaints from members. And then she said, okay, moving on to item 13. And so we didn't do that. And so I just wanted you to know.
I was under the impression there was no public discussion, but if I was wrong, I'm corrected, and we can do that.
No, there's no public discussion. I thought there was
discussion.
board discussion about it. Yeah,
Okay,
I apologize. I apologize for being late. During there was a leak. We had a leak in my house. So any event that I attend to, but and again, I don't know what detail you provided, Claire, about the task force that you were proposing, but
No, I can read that for you since you missed it.
Okay.
I recommend creating a task force whose responsibility will be to develop a code of conduct and a process to handle complaints about members. So we can have board discussion now.
I would just like to say that I think it's concerning that we didn't already have a code of conduct in place and a process and procedure by which to address any member complaints or complaints about members. And I think it's a necessary step to create a task force to have those discussions and to create a code of conduct policy to ensure that we are keeping our members safe, that we are ensuring that we are not creating situations where we could be putting our members in positions where they could be harmed, either emotionally, physically, what have you. And so, I think it's very necessary that we have these conversations, that we have this task force to create these processes, because they should have been created years and years and years ago. And so I think had we had those in place, the board would not have spent the last several hours in executive session trying to determine, what next steps could possibly be.
Thank you, Ashanti. Kevin?
Yeah, I would also point out that there is a code of conduct for the convention that most of the members do not know. And we were able to trace it during executive session. We were able to trace that back to at least 2019. So when you register for the convention, whether you have paid attention to that or not, there is a code of conduct requirement that everyone must follow if they're at the convention. The decision is to expand on that, to look at that and expand on that beyond convention, but for general purposes. Hagit, you're very well aware that we expelled a couple of members back in 2008 or 9. The decision by the board then was to expel them, but ultimately what we did was we refused to let their membership. When their membership expired, we chose not to renew it. So somewhere between 2008 and 2023, we have had very few issues, but it's something that we need to have on the books. We feel not only just for the convention, but for the membership in general, so that there is moving forward, as Ashanti said, moving forward. It's something all the boards should have probably taken a look at. And that's where we are. I'm confident that Claire will have a task force that's going to be open to discussions and suggestions, and this will be done in the open, and we'll have opportunities to review this multiple times, just like a code of ethics, before anything is voted on by the board or membership.
Of course, Kevin, thank you. The more voices in this issue, the better. Israel.
Just a question about process and procedure. So as I understand it, Claire, this task force will make recommendations. Those recommendations would be in the form of changing the bylaws, which means then that recommendation would have to go to the bylaws committee, and the bylaws committee would then meet, and then they would make recommendations to the board, and the board would vote on those. And I'm curious, since we have the bylaws chair here, do you see that would fit the timeline for this year, or is this going to be an issue that we will be studying for 2 years and push that to 24? Can you give us a sort of a big picture here?
Yeah, I mean, so I believe, I'd have to double check this, but I believe the bylaws proposals have to get to be voted on by the board 120 days before the convention or so. So that would be a really tight time frame to get it before the delegates for this year's convention.
So then would that be that the task force would have to meet during a certain time period, and they would have to report out no later than X date, right?
Yeah.
So we'd have to figure out part of what Claire just said, which is a task force. Would she have to give direction to the task force and you have to complete by X date?
Yeah. However, and that's if we were to go through the bylaws. If we were to make it a policy, we wouldn't have that. If we were to make the code of conduct a policy, we wouldn't have that same restriction.
Can I ask Mark Balin? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Are you done? Because I wanted to ask Mark Balin to clarify that bylaws, policy, and which direction.
Well, I mean, if the code of conduct, may or may not need to be approved, by the members. But if there's going to be a process for revoking membership, it would probably be best if it were in the bylaws, because that does get approved by the membership, or at least the delegates representing the membership, representatives of the membership. So I would advise that if there was going to be a policy regarding removal or revocation, that would go through bylaws. We'll have to look at to see. I mean, there's a specific bylaws provision about the code of ethics, but this is different from the code of ethics.
Could I just ask a question? If we were to adopt a policy, you could still have that policy go through the membership, the same way the code revisions of the code of ethics does. Right now, the code of ethics goes to the delegates. Even last year, if we had gotten rid of the delegates, it still would have gone towards the membership. So you could have a code of conduct policy that does the same exact thing.
But isn't there a bylaw provision that provides for that?
As far as I know, in terms of revising the code of ethics, there's no bylaws provision that requires it to go to the delegates. It just, that's the system we've adopted. So you could do the same thing with a code of conduct. Yeah, there's no bylaws provision for the code of ethics.
All right, Peter.
Yeah, okay, just not to get too in the weeds, but I guess there's a number of ways this could be done. I'm thinking the likely way would be we likely wouldn't have the entire code of conduct as part of the bylaws, but they would be incorporated by reference, say that they exist, they're here, or we could, that would expand the bylaws a whole lot. But I mean, I think so. I mean, we don't have the whole code of ethics in the bylaws, for example, yet they are referred to by reference. So it's there's a way to do it, but obviously the whole code of conduct, whatever's come up with, the whole procedure for revoking membership, that should be in it. If there is one, that should be in the bylaws, and the reference. That's just how I'm thinking about it now. I actually, this is way too in the weeds. Never mind.
Okay, thank you. Israel. You're on mute.
I'm just looking at Bob Becker's chat. We can't answer the second part to his chat because that is information protected under the executive session. But to his first sentence, we do need to provide a due process when we remove a member. I would say if this is going to impact members, it would just seem prudential that we would send this to the members to vote on this as part of the bylaws. And if we're having this discussion right now, I wonder, Claire, if we need to take a vote to go, what does the board think? Do we think this needs to be a policy matter, or does this need to be a bylaws matter? Because it seems like we may be in conflict. And if we are, then to Adam's point, he's got an argument for making this a policy matter from the task force. I would argue that it has to be a bylaws issue. So I'm wondering if we need to have that motion and that vote.
I appreciate that. This did come up in planning for the meeting, and I figured the task force would address that.
Yeah, I mean, if we want the membership to vote on it, which is fine, you know, we would not need, it doesn't need to be a bylaw. You could send it to the delegates as a policy, I would think, because that's essentially what we do with the ethics code.
Okay, thank you. Any other board questions or comments?
Yeah, I think we should adjourn and let the task force handle this issue.
Okay, all right. I guess I'll go back to adjournment and see if I can accept a motion from somebody to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
That was Daniela. Is there a
Second.
Okay.
I think Adam had it first.
Okay. In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, and we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.